Today, we're unearthing 5 rituals that civilization has tried to forget. These aren't ghost stories. They're documented historical ceremonies where the ultimate price was paid in an attempt to control fate, appease wrathful gods, or simply because a leader commanded it. This is what happens when devotion crosses into the darkness. The Aztec heart harvest. The scale is almost impossible to comprehend. We're not talking about a few isolated incidents. At the main temple in Tenochtitlan, archaeologists estimate thousands of people were sacrificed every single year. The city wasn't just a political capital. It was a machine designed for ritual slaughter, all to feed the sun god Huitzilopochtli. The theology was brutally simple. The sun needed strength for its daily battle through the underworld. Human hearts were the fuel. Without a constant supply of this divine energy, the world would plunge into eternal darkness. The entire civilization operated on this apocalyptic timer. Now, picture the ceremony itself. The victim, often a captured warrior, is dragged up the pyramid steps. The climb itself is part of the ritual, a mirror of the sun's difficult ascent. At the summit, 4 priests pin him down over the convex sacrificial stone, arching his back to expose the chest. A 5th priest, the Tenochtitlan, doesn't use a metal blade. He uses obsidian volcanic glass sharper than any modern steel. With one precise, brutal motion, he plunges the blade just below the ribcage and saws upward. His hands move into the cavity to rip the still beating heart out. He raises it, steaming, towards the sun as an offering, a direct transfer of life force. But the horror doesn't end there. The body, now just an empty vessel, is thrown down the temple steps. It tumbles end over end, coming to rest in a heap at the base. Sometimes, the limbs were severed for ceremonial cannibalism, a final, grim consumption of the sacred energy. This wasn't hidden. It was public spectacle, a necessary and celebrated act of survival that required a constant state of war to keep the victims flowing. The Spanish conquistadors were horrified, but their accounts are now backed by archaeology layers of earth blackened with immense quantities of dried blood, the Moloch offering. While the Aztecs worked in the brutal daylight, another ritual was conducted in the fire-lit secrecy of the ancient Levant. This one revolves around a name that still carries a chilling weight: Moloch. The biblical texts condemn it, describing children being passed through fire for this bronze god. For a long time, scholars debated if this was just vicious propaganda against rival cultures. Then, we found the Tophets. Outside the great Phoenician city of Carthage, archaeologists uncovered walled enclosures that weren't normal cemeteries. They were fields of urns, thousands of them, containing the cremated remains of very young children and, sometimes, animals. The stones marking these burial sites, called stelae, aren't vague. They're terrifyingly specific. They carry inscriptions from parents thanking the gods, specifically Baal, Hammon, and Tanit, often associated with Moloch, for hearing their voice. This implies the sacrifice was an answer to a prayer. The debate used to rage. Were these just burials for children who died naturally? The evidence leans toward ritual. The remains show a consistent age range of infants, not a spread you'd see from disease. The ceremony was a transaction of ultimate desperation. The logic was coldly practical. You're a Phoenician merchant. Your city is under siege. Your crops are failing. Your trade ships are lost. The gods are clearly angry. What is the most valuable, most precious thing you can offer to appease them and secure your future? Your firstborn son, your heir, the continuation of your bloodline. The ritual demanded the one thing you could never replace. Historical accounts, though from hostile sources, describe a giant bronze statue of Moloch with outstretched, furnace-heated arms. The sacrifice was placed there, its cries allegedly drowned out by drums and flutes. The purpose was to buy favor, to ensure military victory or agricultural success. It was the darkest possible investment, paid in the currency of children, the Thuggee strangulation ceremony. While the Phoenicians sought to control fate through desperate offerings, another cult perfected a ritual of deception and intimate violence. The Thuggees of India didn't build temples. Their sacred space was the open road. For nearly 6 centuries, they operated as a secret society within the fabric of Indian society, posing as harmless travelers, merchants, or pilgrims. Their target was always the lone traveler, the person seeking safety in numbers. The hook was friendship. They would gain their victims' trust over days of walking, sharing food and stories. Then, when the moment was perfect, the ritual would begin. The tool was the rumel, a sacred yellow sash worn like a belt. To the victim, its uncoiling was just a gesture, perhaps to wipe sweat or share a cloth. For the Thuggee, it was the summoning of the noose. The killing was a silent, practiced art. The senior thug, the Butoti, would slip the loop around the neck from behind while his accomplices distracted the victim. The strangulation was quick, a ritualized act called Fansagar, dedicated to the goddess Kali. They believed the world was created from a cosmic struggle where Kali drank the blood of a demon to prevent it from regenerating. To keep the universe in balance, she required a constant supply of blood. The Thuggee saw themselves not as murderers, but as priests, providing a necessary sacrament. The ceremony had strict rules. The victim had to be killed silently and without bloodshed if possible, as the blood was for Kali alone. After the killing, the body was meticulously searched, and any money or valuables were considered divine offerings. The corpse was then disposed of in a prescribed way, often buried in a hastily dug grave, with the limbs broken in position to prevent the soul from escaping and seeking revenge. The scale was staggering. Before the British systematically suppressed them in the 19th century, the Thuggees were estimated to have been responsible for over 1 million deaths. This wasn't random banditry. It was a generations-long, religiously sanctioned killing spree, hiding in plain sight, proving that the most terrifying rituals don't need an altar, just a lonely road and a smiling face. The Phoenician Tophet ritual. The practice of offering children to the gods wasn't isolated to the cult of Moloch. It found its most chilling archaeological footprint in the Carthaginian Tophets. Unlike the Thuggees' mobile terror, this was a fixed, institutionalized horror. The Tophets were sacred, walled precincts on the outskirts of the great Phoenician colony of Carthage. They weren't hidden. They were a recognized and accepted part of the city's spiritual landscape, a place where the city's elite went to make their most desperate bargains. Walking into a Tophet is an archaeologist's nightmare. The ground is a grid of small, neat burial urns, row upon row, thousands of them. When excavated, these urns don't contain the bones of elders or victims of plague. They hold the charred remains of children, newborns, and infants up to 2 years old. Mixed in are the bones of lambs and young birds, perhaps offered as symbolic substitutes when a child was too precious to give or when the ritual demanded a pure, unblemished life. The stones that mark these graves, the stelae, remove any doubt about the intent. The inscriptions are chillingly grateful. They thank the goddess Tanit and the god Baal Hammon for hearing my voice, a phrase that strongly implies the sacrifice was made in response to a granted prayer or a sought-after favor. The ritual likely occurred during times of extreme crisis, a prolonged drought, a brutal siege, a devastating plague. The logic was a brutal calculus of appeasement. A merchant or aristocrat, facing the annihilation of their family line and wealth, would reason that sacrificing one child, the firstborn son and heir, was a price worth paying to save the entire family and its future. The act was meant to be the ultimate display of devotion, a transaction with the divine so costly it couldn't be ignored. The ceremony itself may have involved passing the child through or into fire, a symbolic offering of the life force to the gods. The sheer scale of the Tophet cemetery suggests this wasn't a rare, last resort measure, but a recurring feature of Carthaginian society for centuries. It's a stark reminder that some of history's darkest rituals weren't the acts of fringe fanatics, but the sanctioned practices of a sophisticated and powerful civilization, a testament to the terrifying lengths people will go to secure a future they fear is slipping away. The Bacchanalian descent. But the final ritual shows what happens when ecstatic worship curdles into something far darker. The Roman Bacchanalia began as secret nighttime rites for the god Bacchus, involving wine, dancing, and a temporary escape from social order. But by 186 BC, the Roman Senate was terrified. Their investigation revealed the ceremonies had descended into a pit of sexual violence, poisonings, and ritual murder. Participants, whipped into a frenzy, believed they were possessed by the god himself, making any atrocity permissible. It sparked one of Rome's earliest moral panics, leading to the execution of thousands. This was devotion twisted into a license for destruction. Conclusion: the pattern in the darkness. The common thread isn't just violence. It's the terrifying human capacity to justify the unthinkable in pursuit of control over nature, fate, or the divine. These rituals were logical to those performing them. They reveal the thin, fragile line between faith and fanaticism, between seeking salvation and creating hell on earth. These are just 5 of history's buried horrors. Subscribe to Dr. Hollowstone to uncover more stories they tried to erase. Let me know in the comments which forgotten ritual haunts your curiosity. Until next time.